Hello?
Hello.
All right.
I'm here.
Thank you for coming.
Oh. Am I on? Yeah.
Hi, Jay. How you doing?
Good, Tom. How are you? Hey, Laurie.
Hello, Jay. Hello, Robert. Oh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now
Yeah.
I can hear you.
What a joy. I've got to shut the door where my dehumidifier is working overtime.
Okay.
There we go.
That's better. I think that's better. Okay.
You sitting next to the tap, Lori?
Next to the tap. No. You're terrible.
Oh, dear.
Then who else is here? Okay. Oh, hi, Neil. I talked to you the other day.
Hi, John.
Jay, how are you tonight, sir?
Good. Good.
How's everyone else? I heard this was the place to be tonight, so that's why I'm going to listen in.
It's all action all the time.
It's great.
Waiting for a couple more members.
Okay.
Anybody report in as not coming tonight?
No.
Hello, this is Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Sherry.
Hi. This is my third board meeting in 36 hours.
Oh my gosh.
You look like a giant phone tonight.
I am.
Ah.
I'll wait another minute or so and then we'll get going.
Okay.
We have 5 members on the call, so we have a quorum right now, but I'll wait a minute because I know at least 2 others that are coming.
Hello.
Hello, Rick.
Good evening, Rick.
How's it going?
It's all good.
Good.
Well, why don't we get started? We have 5 members from the committee on the line, so why don't we start the meeting and hopefully they'll join us in a minute or so. This is the September 2nd CPC meeting at 7 p.m. by Zoom. And let me do a roll call attendance. I'm here, Robert Preston.
Yes, sir.
Sherry Leonard.
I'm here.
Yeah, Rick Johansson.
Here.
Kim Deedle.
Here.
And we don't have Sean Farrell or Richard Boroff yet. Hopefully we do. And I'll just recognize some of the other faces. I see John McGrath, the new member of the Finance and Advisory Committee. Kevin Kaminsky's on the line. Neil Zalot from the Hamilton Wenham Chronicle is here. And Thomas McEnany. And then
McEnany.
sorry.
Close. So, Mr. Chairman, I would also recommend that you just announce that the meeting is being recorded as well for purposes of the wiretap statute.
Okay. We are recorded, as Thomas notes.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we proceed into the agenda, and hopefully the others will join us in a minute. First, I'd like to introduce our new CPC coordinator, Laurie Wilson. She starts officially, I think, next Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes.
And
But I've been in the office part-time since the end of June on a temporary basis, and then applied for the job. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be helping out at Town Hall and being Joe's assistant. And
We're glad you're here.
what I know you're assistant to Joe and our coordinator. What other titles do you have? Or have I told you about them yet?
past titles.
No, current titles. Are you coordinator?
Assistant to the town manager and community preservation coordinator.
Okay.
I think that's all.
All right. Okay. I asked that because the previous coordinator also functioned as somewhat of a coordinator for the Historic District Commission and
yeah.
the Affordable Housing Trust.
Correct. I think they use the CPC title to embrace those.
Oh, okay.
Embrace those two, yes.
All right, very good. Next item of business is that we need to approve the minutes of our last meeting for August 12th. They were sent out to all. Could somebody make a motion to accept the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
Okay. Could I have a second?
I second.
Okay. So we have the motion to accept the minutes from October 12th in a second. Is there any comment, corrections, discussion about them?
None that I could see.
Let's go for a vote to see how we accept it. I certainly do. Robert, say yay or nay or abstain, depending on.
Yay.
Yay. Sherry,
Yes, Sherry Leonard.
Rick Johansson,
Yay.
Kim Deagle.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have approved minutes. Now, committee member reports. The only official committee member is Sherry. Sherry, do you have any comments you want to make about the Housing Authority or the Council on Aging?
No, I don't know if this is appropriate, but there is a garden party at 2 o'clock on September 11th for people kind of over a certain age, just to celebrate our senior citizens that live in Hamilton. So if you could spread the word, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Next item on the agenda is continue our discussion of the review of eligibility and possibly funding requests for a roofing project at 550 Highland Street, which is the Dodge House part of the Bradley Palmer State Park. This project was request was submitted by Kevin Kaminsky, who's also on the line. And we tabled this last meeting in order that I might seek more information. And so let me report on my activities since the last meeting to add to. I reached out to Scott Clements, the chair of the Historic District Commission, and asked him for comments on this request. And Scott didn't have much to say. He said that he's not been approached by curator or tenants or anybody about any work on that house at Bradley Palmer. And that he comments that since the house is outside the historic district, the HHDC's authority only extends to propose major additions or demolition of the structure in part or in whole. And we have not received any applications for either. And so he feels as though he doesn't really have any input or comment on how we rule on this grant request. I also contacted Stuart Saganor at the Community Preservation Coalition office in Boston to get his view on this matter. And I have a bunch of notes here. Stuart is very familiar with Kevin's situation, as he'd spoken with Kevin several times in the past, as Kevin had sought him in the representing the coalition office to support his effort to overturn the law that allowed Hamilton to assess property taxes. And he commented that he personally sympathized and supported the idea of changing that law. At the time, he didn't feel it was appropriate for the CPA coalition to participate in the activities. And he went on to say that while he personally supported changing the law, he doesn't personally support the idea of using the CPA as a means of reimbursing Kevin for past property taxes levied and paid under that law. He believes there are two different types of historic preservation: that which is being done by a nonprofit, an individual municipality, by the state, versus historic preservation done out of a curatorship program. He thinks the historic preservation done under the guidance of the curatorship program is different. It needs to be looked at separately. And he didn't think the CPA had a role in supporting historic preservation under the latter. However, he did note there was no role against doing so. So he's saying that, again, it's up to our committee. He was very familiar with the DCR, Historic Curatorship Program, and he pointed out that the agreement between the curator and the DCR requires The curator had spent his own money to preserve and maintain the property in return for a rent-free lease. And while he didn't think it was a good idea, he made it clear there were no rules against our consideration of the grant request. When asked if an individual had ever been given a CPC grant, he noted a situation in Cambridge regarding historic preservation of privately owned older historic homes located within that community's historic district. Recognizing the public benefit of fixing up several homes so as to make the historic district more aesthetically pleasing, some grants were approved to serve the public good to restore these homes. And he pointed out that this was allowed under the Mass Anti-Aid Amendment to the Mass Constitution, and that because of that, the grant recipients were required to sign a 30-year historic preservation restriction agreement that would be passed on to the new owners if the property were sold. And the reason why it was allowed under the Anti-Aid Amendment was for the public good. It was recognized that this was a good thing to do for the general public. When asked if the CPC ever approved a grant for historic preservation of a state-owned property, he was not sure, but said if said property would lie within a community historic district, that it might be appropriate as it would serve the public good. He could not cite any examples. When asked if a CPC grant could be approved for work already done on a project, he said that he was aware of only one instance where it was done in the past, and that was in Monson after a tornado several years ago, where several historic municipal buildings were damaged and needed emergency repair. The local CPC subsequently approved grants for reimbursement of those repairs. Finally, in recognizing that the real reason for the grant request to provide some monetary reimbursement for past property taxes that Kevin felt were improperly collected, Stewart noted that it was not the intention of the CPA program to be used in such a manner, and further suggested that any decision made by the Hamilton CPC would need to be carefully considered. However, he did not cite any objections, if you will, to approving money for a state facility, approving money to an individual, approving money for part of the work already done. So he pretty much didn't agree with the grant request, but said that there was no objection, official objection that he could outline against it. And he left it in our hands and he said, let me know what happens. I think I'll stop there. I had a comment from Tom McEnany, I'll get it right, before that he looked at this grant before it came to our committee. And I guess Tom, I don't want to put words, Tom, but you more or less said it was up to the committee, and that the only comment you would have is that it would certainly need a historic preservation restriction on the property if we went forward with approving it. Do you want to comment any more?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's correct. I agree with the comments that you made concerning the discussion that you had with the CPA Coalition person, Stuart Saganor, that in my opinion, that provided the committee reviews the application and you determine that it does in fact fall within one of the applicable appropriate uses for community preservation funds, in this case, historic preservation, in my opinion, the committee would have the discretion to grant the application, provided, of course, that there is a historic preservation restriction recorded on the property that would be in effect for a minimum of 30 years. Now, I was informed that I believe there was an email from Mr. Kaminsky indicating that he believed that there is at least one historic preservation restriction already recorded on the property. In reviewing the records available on the Registry of Deeds website, however, we did not find any such historic preservation restriction. So in my opinion, if the committee were to grant the application, we would want to make sure that that was a condition of the grant. And that is typically as you may recall, in some of the warrant articles that we have drafted that I'm sure you've seen and reviewed, the language that we include in there is that any such grant is subject to the granting of a historic preservation restriction. So we would recommend that you do so in this instance as well.
Okay. I have a couple more items to mention. I did some other research. I went on to the Department of Conservation and Recreation to try and find information about the Dodge House at Bradley Palmer State Park. And I found the trail map, but the Dodge House is not shown on it at all, because I was trying to see what was written, if anything, about public access. And then on Friday, August 20th, my wife and I drove out to Bradley Palmer State Forest and stopped at the headquarters building. There were 2 employees in the front room and 2 more in the back room. And I approached the 2 employees in the front room, man and a woman, and I asked, but where could I find the Dodge House? And they both looked at me strangely. And the woman said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, it's on the Hamilton side of the park. And she said, no, never heard of it. So she called to the back room and one of the gentlemen came out. He was in uniform, park uniform. And I asked him, and he too looked at me and shook his head and looked at the woman and said, never heard of it. And I said, well, I think it's where Kevin Kaminsky lives. And he goes, oh, yes, Kevin, I know. Yeah, I know where he lives. Yeah, I know that. Then he said, I said, well, where was it? And he said, well, the house is private and there's no public access. And I said, no public access at all? And he said, no. And then he said, I can get you a tour of the main house at Willowdale if you want. And I said, no, that's okay. Thank you for your time. And I left. I didn't identify myself, didn't press the issue. I just wanted to see what would happen if I went in blind and tried to visit the Dodge House. And that was my experience. So that's what I did this past month since our last meeting to try and put more information on it. And to sum it all up, I guess, from what I hear from everybody who might have feelings on this, it's up to our committee to make a determination. And I think it revolves around the public good of approving such a grant. And so let me open it up to anybody else who might want to say something.
If we place it as a warrant article, it still comes before the town so that community members will have some input. If we feel that it is eligible and that we would like to fund it, that's going to be the stopper at the end of the pike. And I think there are going to be plenty of people who will stand up, because they always do, and ask us what this is for. Where is this? How can I see this? How is my money being spent on this going to impact me and my life and my community? And I think it's safe to say we have absolutely no idea. I mean, if the state authorities don't know anything about it and the park rangers know very little about it except that it's private property and nobody can go, I don't see necessarily a community good. It is out of the historic district, so we just leave that alone and ignore that if we're just going to consider the public good of having to, after the fact, assist in the payment of work already done. I think that there's a precedent there that could be a pain in the butt for us in the future. And that's got me really sitting on the no thank you side of the fence. That's pretty much all I have.
Mr. Chairman, just at one point of clarification, we didn't really review the specific project that's being proposed. The question really came up whether or not CPC funds could be used to fund a historic preservation project at the Dodge House. Mm-hmm. So we didn't really get into the specifics of it because ultimately whether the proposed project or whatever it may be that the curator wishes to present to the committee is really something that would be within the discretion of the committee to make a determination whether or not it would qualify for purposes of funding under the CPC. So, so at least with respect to the specific project in question, we didn't really look at into any kind of, or make any kind of determination of value judgment with respect to whether it's a good project, whether it qualifies or not. We just looked at it from the perspective of, is it possible to use CPA funds to fund a historic preservation project at this particular property? And we concluded that yes, it would be if obviously if the CPC determines that the project so qualifies. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification. And we didn't really look at it as a project specific issue.
We did.
Sure, as you should, and that's the committee's role. But from the purposes, from our purposes as town council, we just looked at it more generally in terms of is it okay to use CPC funds in this particular instance if the project so qualifies?
We have two steps. We have to, as you're well aware, Tom, that one is eligibility and one is the funding. And I think we were sort of concentrating on the eligibility of the project because of the things I've already mentioned here before we actually took a look at what is the funding for and what's going to be done. So we hadn't done that. We wanted to make a vote on the eligibility, because if it doesn't pass a vote on eligibility in the committee, the rest of the conversations move. So are you suggesting that we should spend some time hearing about the nitty-gritty details of the project some more? I mean, Kevin presented us, he was brief in his presentation last week when he introduced the grant, so we didn't get into the level of detail. Are you suggesting we should open that up and discuss some details some more?
No, it's really up to you as a chair and as a committee to make the determination of what you think you need in order to determine whether or not the project A qualifies, and B, whether it's a project that you wish to fund. So I don't really have an opinion on that issue specifically. Ultimately, that's a discretionary matter for the committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions or comments?
I do. I like how, because I'm the newest committee member, I like how we've addressed eligibility first. And it sounds like from Jay's research that the project would be eligible to be considered. But from the original presentation from Kevin, it did sound like, from my perspective, the nature of the request doesn't match up with the true purpose of how we're supposed to spend the CPC funds. So that's my sticking point personally.
You know, I have similar feelings. To approve this project, Kevin's been at this for 11 years as curator, and I think he's got another 13 or 14 to go. If we were to approve this grant, we may see more in the future. If we also approve this grant, we set a precedent on our committee of paying for work already done on a project that we've kind of shied away from to this point. And we also set a precedent by giving money to an individual, which we've shied away from in the past as well. So it sets some precedents here that I'm not comfortable with personally, but again, it's within our purview to vote yay or nay against this. So does anyone else want to comment? Kevin, would you like to speak to what's going on, or John, or?
I really, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, this was an idea that I really didn't propose to the board. It came from the Board of Selectmen, and I realized that you know, it's a little out of the ordinary, and I'm personally not offended or upset if you would just say no. I would completely understand where that decision comes from. Seems to me that you've been kind of put in a tight spot, and that there's a problem out there, and whether it's your problem to solve or not, and I'm just not sure where we go from here. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
I understand all the concerns that you people have, and I understand, the chair of the Community Preservation Committee's viewpoint also. But the decision is yours. It's not anyone else's. It's not mine. It's not the state's. It's your decision as a board of the community. That's all I can say.
Okay. Does anyone else on the call have a comment, or question?
Hey, Jay, John McGrath. I'm not a member of the council here or the committee, but I've developed a pretty clear point of view on this, and I'd be more than willing to share that as a citizen. And so I don't know if it's appropriate for me to comment or not, but I'm sitting here in my capacity as the FinCom liaison to this team, so more than happy to make any additional comments if it's warranted.
Yes, please do.
So I think it would be potentially palatable to spend some money if this property was clearly complying with sort of the common good, meaning, and I think Sean Farrell mentioned this last time, on a go-forward basis. So I would recommend that any grant would be made on a go-forward basis, not a retroactive basis. That would be my first point. Secondly, the common good point, the fact that it's not even on the radar from a common good standpoint, meaning, is it publicized that you can, as a citizen, you can go in and visit it? Is it clearly a resource to the community? Is it, clearly, sort of part of the program? And I think if those adjustments were made, go forward, clear community value, clear community access, then that would certainly raise, my appetite to recommend that this be considered. So, I don't think this committee or any of the town officials want to sort of get into sort of the reimbursement from the property tax issue. I think this should be a very clear go forward, clearly within the bounds of the commission's charter. The benefit of the town is clearly being addressed. It's obvious where it is. So all those things, that would make it a whole lot more palatable. So I think the conversation from a month ago was around, if you can get the project into that, in those guardrails, then it probably would be more likely to be considered and approved by this committee. So I think this project is not even, in the guardrails. I think it potentially could be, but I wouldn't feel comfortable sort of approving funding of this, because it's sort of off the highway. It really doesn't feel even close to being, under the purview of the committee. Those are my thoughts. So in the future, could it be? If a lot of work was done, potentially a future expenditure could be approved. And I'd feel a whole lot more comfortable if a lot of those things were addressed. So anyway, long-winded way of delivering my message, but those are some of my thoughts. And we actually chatted a little bit about this at the FinCom as well. Anyway, just thought I could share those points for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The FinCom, if we were to approve this and move it ahead to town meeting, as we all know, the FinCom will definitely both write up and make a verbal comment on their feelings on this before it goes to a vote at town meeting. So appreciate your input, John.
Yep, thanks.
Does anyone else like to say anything? If not, I can't make the motion, but could I ask someone on our committee to make a motion as to what we'd like to do with this grant?
Well, I think we have to start out by making a motion to determine whether we think the project as constituted in the written request to the committee is something that we would consider eligible for funding.
The vote is on the eligibility of the project.
Affirmative.
So somebody needs to make a motion for or against the acceptance of its eligibility.
I move that it is not, as currently constituted, eligible.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
A second.
That was Rick.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, Rick.
Okay, we have a motion that it's not eligible, and we have a second. So are there any more discussion, comments anybody wants to make before we go to a roll call vote? Okay, the way the motion was made, that if you vote yay, you're saying the project is not eligible. So the motion was that should not be eligible. So a yay vote saying you agree with the way the motion was worded, that when we don't approve its eligibility. So with that, let's go to a vote. Robert, yay or nay?
Yay.
Sherry Leonard.
Yay.
Rick Johansson.
Yay.
Kim Deedle.
Yes.
And I say yes. That's 5-0. We vote not eligible, so we will not proceed to a discussion on eligibility. And I think there were some very good comments made by Robert and especially by John McGrath as to how this might be looked at moving forward into the future. So unless there's some other post-vote comments, Kevin, sorry, good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. Let's move on to the next part of our agenda, the review of open grants.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
I assume you don't need me to stick around any longer?
No, I don't. I appreciate
it. All right. Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay. Take care.
Yep. Review open grants, the town hall renovation, addition, and preservation project. I still don't hear anything out of town hall management. They're still thinking about it. I'm sure the FinCom kicks it around at times. I'm sure the Board of Selectmen have been talking about it, but there's been no plan put forward to bring it to go out for another set of quotes and go back to town meeting. So we remain in limbo with $4 million in approved grants until it gets approved at town meeting, subsequently at a vote at the polls, and construction starts by November 15th, 2022. The Patton Park tennis court renovations, I did reach out in the last week or two to Sean Timmons, the rec department coordinator. And I'm looking for my notes. And Sean recently went out for formal bids, and he is about to sign the contract for $28,000 to resurface the tennis courts at Patton Park. I believe our approved grant was 32 grand, so we would be refunded the difference. He's also gonna rehab the basketball court for 5K, but he's not using our grant money for that. That was never part of the original ask, so he's gonna do that out of the revolving fund. So he hopes to have work starting somewhat soon with regard to scheduling that work being done. The First Congregational Church of Hamilton, Belfry, and Clock Tower renovation. I reached out to C.C. Gao, who's the
She's the director of operations at the church.
director of operations, right? She says, hi, Jay, we were on schedule with American Steeple and expect work to begin in 2022. In the meantime, she's awaiting signatures on the Historic Preservation Restriction Agreement. She says that the church officials signed the document, but signatures are still outstanding from the Hamilton Board of Selectmen, the Hamilton Historic Commission, and the Mass Historical Commission. And she's been in touch with Lori Wilson, who's working on getting those done.
The selectmen have signed it, but the Historic District Commission has not met in a couple months. And it's been hard to get them in. So they meet later this month. I'll make sure we get the signatures if they're not in before that.
Okay. Okay, excellent. The update on the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Athletic Facilities Improvement Project. This group formed in early May before town meeting. As I said last month, they've only had 2 meetings of about an hour each and not much was decided. But lo and behold, I got an email this afternoon from Tom Geary, the chair of the committee. And he had been sending out requests for quotes to add the 4 tennis courts and the softball field upgrade to the original 2015 plan. But he only received 1 quote from Gale Associates, who did all the original work and who did all the original quoting, and no other company showed any interest. So he's kind of befuddled as to what he has to do. So he said he was going to contact some state officials next week to find out if he can proceed with only 1 quote. So more to come. And then he asked, are we all still on to have a future meeting? And he said, let him know if you have any conflicts. And that was it. So there's no more meetings planned. We haven't met for several months now, so don't know. He admitted that there were some startup issues and conflicts getting school going, and that was part of the reason, but so there's no activity. Is there any other business we need to talk about this evening?
EJ, can I ask an informational question as to how you proceed? So, you know, going back to the town hall item. So if the committee approves a project, it sounds like you've done, does it expire? Is it time bound?
Yes.
Or it is?
We put restrictions on every grant.
I see.
On the town hall, we had 3. 1, it had to be voted, approved at a town meeting by simple majority, or actually 2/3. And 2, it had to be approved at a subsequent special election, and it failed at 2 consecutive special elections. And lastly, construction had to start by November 22nd, 2022. So it does expire on November 15th, 2022. So we put a time requirement. Most of the time grants we approved have a 2-year time frame from the date of approval, that the work has to start within 2 years.
So that approval item number 2, or criteria number 2, could still materialize at a future election. So the point is, it's still breathing on 2 out of the 3 conditions potentially.
Well, right now we've approved up to $4 million in grants for town hall.
Right.
So the amount of annual bond repayment funds are kind of in a virtual escrow account.
Got
So
it.
as we get grant requests moving ahead from anywhere, we need to make sure that we have enough money moving forward. Should it ever get approved, we have to be able to pay those bond repayments.
I see.
And if somebody asks for a big chunk of money for a big project in the near term, while that is still out there, we're going to have to drag our feet on it to make sure we allow the town hall project to be approved.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just curious as to how you folks are operating. I appreciate the clarification. Just trying to learn the rules of the road here. Thank you.
That particular project is fairly unique in that it's really on life support. I don't know if there's going to be a significant change in the population demographic that doesn't want this to happen in the next year, but I'm not even sure if it's going to be presented at the next town meeting. Jay may know, but sort of a rinse and repeat situation comes up,
right.
And then we have fall, and then it's done.
Right.
So it's a little different from some of the other,
yeah.
The tennis courts, for example. If they decided they weren't going to even do that, it would sunset, the money would come back to us. And since there's no bond involved, it's a much simpler process.
I see.
Yeah, the town hall is a unique situation where we're not sure whether it's going to happen at all. And there, as I said earlier, there's no plans moving forward to bring it up. The only thing I noticed recently in the news that the cost of construction materials are coming down rapidly from where they were 6 months ago, so that maybe somebody will have the bright idea to go back out for another quote to find out what it will cost and use that number going forward to try to get it approved. But I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lori.
Well, I was just going to say, I know there's still been some discussion. It's not, at a dead stop. I think recognizing what some of the comments were from the public, looking at other ways of finding money besides on the tax rate. So I think there have been some discussions. I'm not privy on all the details yet, but just know that it's still in discussion. It's not, just sitting there. Nobody's acting on it. So hopefully, a little while we might get some kind of update.
Yeah, well, the committee's, I'm on the committee for the town hall building committee, and the committee is dormant as far as information.
Right. I think they're just, whether it's other grants or it's looking at how to get more money.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the strategy is to reduce the cost to the taxpayers.
Well, the interesting thing was, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, at the May 2021 vote at the polls, only 981 people voted for or against the project, and we have over 5,700 voters. So it's 17% of the voters cast a ballot, and the vote was 513 no, 442 yes. The 71 vote differential for the project. Had that 71 vote swung the other way, it would be approved. So it's not far away. It really needs some serious marketing hype, get out the vote, et cetera, to make it happen, because the numbers aren't so far apart. It's not like it's a huge vote against it. It's just that a lot of people weren't focused about it, or they didn't care, or whatever it might be. I don't know, but.
Right. And what I heard was some of the discussion of it's kind of either this or that. It's the town hall or it's the athletic fields, or and some people don't understand how we handle those things as different components, especially under the regional school district.
As I said, a couple of times in the past, and we've talked about this within our committee, if we would mount if somebody, a friends group would mount a plan to increase the surcharge in town from 2% to 3%, that would generate enough money to pay for a large chunk of those turf fields. If somebody, or more of the town hall for that matter. So there's a way to do it, but somebody has to get behind that effort. And as I've said to all of you, this committee is not going to lead that charge. We will vote on it, we'll support it, but I don't think we're committed. I'm certainly not committed to run the Friends group and support some project. So we'll see what happens.
Sell the naming rights to town hall. Could turn it into Domino's Hamilton Town Hall.
No neon signs in the historic district.
Yeah.
Jay, in your experience, once something were approved like that at a town meeting, then does it happens the next fiscal year on the property tax, right?
Yep.
So it's not too long of a lag time.
Well, it's by the time you go through all the steps, it's about 3 years, quite frankly.
Before we see any money.
Yeah, because you got to vote at town meeting, and then you have to wait 90 days, and it has to be a scheduled state or municipal election. It can't be a special one. And then you have to, and then after that, somebody would have to put in the grant, and then you'd have to approve that grant at town meeting. And when you lay it all out in time, given the fact we have 2 town meetings a year, it looks like it's about a 3-year process.
Okay.
Once you get it on the warrant. And so
if you can.
Yeah, if you can get on the warrant, that you need 100 signatures to get on the warrant for a special town meeting and 10 signatures for an annual town meeting. And if you get it on the warrant, there's a number of votes you have to pass moving forward. So
it has to be carefully marketed and sold, because the same people that didn't want to see their tax rate go up to build a town hall or to add athletic fields would raise objections without understanding the balance and the payoff for a relatively minor increase in their property taxes. And it also has to be made clear that people who are negatively affected because of fixed income or other income situations can opt out entirely. And it's really hard to explain that to people who just think this thing is going to get tacked on regardless of their financial situation. And that's just not the case. So marketing is key. If we just drop it onto the warrant and it sits in front of the regular people who go to these meetings, they will have the regular objections. And I totally understand where they're coming from. Our tax rate is something to behold.
I think this is Sherry. I've been very fascinated by the increase, that doing the 2 to 3% increase. I agree with Jay. It's not something that this committee should take on, nor could I personally take it on, even to get the signatures. But to me, I think for young families, 3 years is going to go or come or go, no matter what. And there will always be another project or another phase to school athletic fields. It'll be bleachers. It'll be, I don't know what we could have used the money on exactly, but there's going to be something, And to your point, if you are of a certain income, it's not like, so if people want it, it's going to go through and raise property taxes. But the CPC funding, if you're income qualified, you don't have to pay it. And I think that protects mostly, I think, of our older seniors, that do have sort of a fixed income or not a potential to get like a raise or something like that, So I think there would be actually less division of, well, if we pay for town hall, we can't pay for the schools. And I don't use the town hall because I do everything electronically. And that's not the case for everybody in our town, I think all of you have said it much better than I, but I feel like that time's going to go by anyway, and the sooner we can roll out the 2 to 3% increase and the return on it and the benefit is really important. And I can't help but wonder if the marketing power of the turf field folks could really help with that, that may, like, to really talk to whoever's spearheading that this should be a good first step to get that on the ballot, that there's somebody in the group that might be able to do that really pretty easily.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Sherry that I don't think we should be getting signatures or, to get it to increase. I think it should be someone off the committee. Is that what you were saying, Sherry?
Yes, and but I think that there's like, I sort of envision like somebody walking around at flag football or somebody walking around at a baseball game and being like, hey, can you sign this?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Here are the pros. Like, we increase it by 1%, we get this much back. If we want to have this project and we just look at it as increasing your taxes, we're going to increase your taxes, and it's going to be so much more than the difference of this 1%.
Right.
And there's no actual return when you pay your straight property tax. There's no actual like, hey, thanks, Town of Hamilton, now we're going to give you this money on top. It feels like it's just money sitting there. Whereas, say we want to have put $800,000 towards a project, we can figure it out and charge everybody property taxes equal to $800,000, or we could, contribute. I know I'm not doing the math right, but contribute 400 and get 400 from another source, and I think, and then part of me also guards the folks that are sort of on a fixed income, that hearing 2 to 3% does sound like another tax, but just properly educating people that you have to pay your property tax, but you can appeal not to pay this one.
Right.
I know when some of the older folks that I know that were talking about, oh, I don't want to vote for town hall because I don't want my taxes to go up. I was like, listen, vote for it because you need accessibility. And if you're struggling with it, go down to town hall and tell them. Just tell them you can't do, you can't do the CPC tax because it'll deduct it out of, you know what I mean? It'll all kind of, so
yeah.
I may be looking too naively, but I feel like it's a very simple thing that I've been interested in for like a year and a half now. And I'm like, wow, it takes 3 years. A year and a half has gone by.
Yeah.
So.
I think also we have to educate people about tax rate, because I think it was a year or two ago, I looked at the tax rate of Hamilton compared to other cities and towns. Our tax rate is not really that high compared to others. It's because the value of our homes are high. So I think we have to watch what the words we say. And if we show people, I think Hamilton was not even in the top 0.5% for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not our tax rate that's high. It's because our property is valued higher. It's not the tax rate. So I think if you showed people, like, we pay 12%, but I know in Western Mass, they pay like 14 or 15. It's, and I may have the numbers wrong, but I think we need to educate people with we're really not that high, but it's our property.
Well, the property taxes, as far as a lot of these people who object, they think of them as one and the same. You're absolutely right about Western Mass, but their assessed value for their property is significantly lower than ours.
That's what I was saying. It's not the tax rate that's high, it's the property value. And people complain that if the schools go down, then their property, the value of their house is going to go down, but then they complain when their property is high because of the tax. Like, everyone wants everything, but you can't.
No, you can't.
No, but I think we need to let people know, you know what, the tax, I think we have to stop saying that, and we have to tell them our tax rate really is not that high. It's because our homes are assessed higher.
Well, you know, I've tried to have this discussion on all of the above with several people in the past several years, and it's about a 10 to 15-minute discussion. That's the problem. You got to explain the tax rate, and that takes 5 minutes. And then you have to explain the increase in 2% to 3%, how it's calculated, how it affects. Then you have to go and show the difference in revenue going from 2 to 3%. And it gets complicated fairly quickly with the math. And it takes about 15 minutes minimum to have that discussion. And most people's eyes are going to glaze over after the first 5. Therein lies the problem. It's not an easy thing to explain in its fullest to make people truly understand it. I mean, I've been looking at this for 10 years, and every year I think I learn a little bit differently how I might explain it, but it's not a easy discussion to have. It's not a quick discussion. You need to look at pieces of paper. You just can't talk. The numbers get out of hand quickly.
Well, I think so. I was on the finance committee when we supported and the town approved CPA to begin with. And I think a lot of us were excited about it because we were supposed to get an exact match from the state, which I think I had asked you, Jay, once. It happened maybe once or twice, 1 or 2
4
years.
times.
4 times?
Yeah, maybe 4, and then it dwindled as more.
Right, it kept dwindling as more cities and towns adopted it. But now, after listening to your presentation to the selectmen a couple months ago, I didn't realize the difference that the state was giving to the 3%ers versus the 1 and the 2. And so that makes a big difference. And, you know, anytime we can get more money from the state, you know, it's of course in our best interest. But I think that message could be shared a lot if and when we get into this discussion.
But since you saw the presentation I gave, that was on what, 3-4 PowerPoint slides to make a point. So, and it was on a slide where you could read the numbers. So
we just have to find a way to yes, shorten
that conversation over a beer somewhere is not going to work.
I think
our sister town is we should try and learn something from them. I mean, Wenham's had it for a while.
But they did it the right way. The reason they did it is they wanted to rehab their town hall, and they started out with that as the case du jour. And guess what? It worked.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
I do think, though, that there is something to, I know I've supported I've signed on to send things to the higher level. Like somebody in my neighborhood will feel really strongly about something. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean in the end that I have to vote yes for it, but I almost feel like it's sort of that give and take, like, you know, maybe I'm not wholly invested in one project, but I realize I live in a community. And so I do have this sort of vision of somebody who really understands this, knows a lot of people, just going around and getting the signatures, and then and getting it on a ballot for a town meeting. And then, you know, then the education happens, but the ball has to sort of start rolling. And then the education and the benefit and the even throwing in, and Wenham did it. And, you know, because people often will say, oh, well, Wenham has this and that, you know, and some of the education I think can happen after. It just has to start. And I felt like the town hall was going to pass, and then it very quickly the schools were kind of doing the budget at the same time, and it kind of very quickly turned because somebody had gotten the idea that it was the town hall funds was taking away from the school funds, or the pot was being distributed in a certain way, you know, and that's it's hard to have sort of have that agenda jump in pretty late in the talk and shift the vote in that way. But on the other hand, it does show how quickly word can spread when you know how to do it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree, but we need somebody who wants to pick up the banner. Yeah, I'm just looking at
who
my,
was it that was bidding for, who was it that was sending the bids out for the turf field?
Tom Geary.
Maybe we could talk to. He's on the turf field committee.
Yeah, he's chair. He's chairman.
Maybe there's somebody on that committee that would take, you know, the 20-minute talk.
That's
And,
a possibility. I've mentioned the 3% in the last committee meeting, but nobody said anything. I made it clear that if they wanted to, you know, support something that would make money available in the future, that would be the way to go, but nobody jumped on it. I think part of the reason was that we haven't really faced the cruel reality of how much we need and how we're going to pay for it and what's the plan going forward. So maybe when they start to see how tough it's going to be to get the money you need to do everything, somebody will step up and take an interest in the 3% and carry it forward. But I think we're, you know, months away from having that, especially if we don't have any meetings of that committee. So, but yeah, I mean, I will continue to throw it up into the committee as a way to go as they keep talking about things, but we really haven't crystallized on the timing and the amount of money and what's the fundraising goal and whatever. It's been mentioned, but nobody's really done anything hard and fast. So I'll continue to toss it out and see if somebody there would want to take up the banner. And as Sherry said, yeah, there's a possibility somebody there would. So we can try it. I recently, I think I reported last month, I did go to the Capital Committee and give them an update on the 3% and how it worked and what it would take and what money it would provide. And they were very interested in that as a source of funds. But I think I mentioned to them that I didn't know of any town capital projects other than the turf field and the town hall itself that were large enough to warrant, you know, supporting that sort of thing. And they didn't suggest any others. The other big projects facing the town is, you know, a new elementary school, which didn't qualify for CPA funding, or the water problems. And that's kind of I have no idea what the water problems is other than we need water. And I don't think the CPA can support that. So don't know. But we'll persevere. I was just looking at my notes from the presentation, and I had sent it out to the committee a while ago, but you know, there's probably eight PowerPoint slides packed with information and numbers that you have to grasp to say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And so somebody would have to be very adept at marketing and communications and whatever. And we need somebody to step up and do it. We'll see.
Yeah, and because there's no projects right now, I feel like in the time that I've been in Hamilton, there's always been something that's come up. Like, and again, maybe I'm not quite understanding everything, but you know, a piece of land will come up and there's really no money to buy it, but people were like, if we could preserve that, that would be a good idea for a project if we had, just to kind of bookmark it. You know, housing always will be an issue, and creating sort of like for lack of a better word, like a slush fund can't hurt, because sometimes if they build it and they'll come, you know, people will say, oh, well, this opportunity comes up. And
well, the Affordable Housing Trust is
if there's an opportunity around it.
The Affordable Housing Trust is always on the lookout for that.
Because then money that can't be spent, like projects that cannot qualify for CPC funding will take less pure tax money to actually create. So something like a new elementary school, if it's a new elementary school versus something else that we can commit money to, there's a way, you know, there's a way to kind of do both without taking away necessarily from one.
People should be more aware of what we've already done. The pool, the Sagamore Hill project, the fact that there's all this open land, thanks to what we've been able to accomplish with our partners. People should not have to be hit over the head to understand what our capabilities are and what we have provided already for the town in terms of supporting affordable housing, the community house, the AP Gardner Post, and on it goes. But it gets lost when everybody starts worrying about how much it's going to cost them to get into this whole 3% situation. And it's really hard to keep people's eyes focused on what we've been able to do and what more we could do with the additional funds. I don't think it's a lack of getting viable community projects that people recognize, because if they don't recognize what we've done, they're blind anyway.
Jay, could I get a set of those slides? Are those available somewhere on your website, or could you email them to me? I'd like to get read up on that if I could.
Our website's kind of in disarray because we've been without a coordinator for so many months.
I'm working on it. I am working on it.
I'll send you a set directly, John.
Jay, this is Mary Ellis.
Yep.
Hi, those are posted. They're in the minutes and they're an attachment, and you can find them there. They're on the web now.
They are.
Are they on the website separately or just as part of the minutes?
They might be in both places, but I know they're part of the minutes with the CPC because I put them there, but they're probably somewhere else as well.
I think they're on I think there's a separate.
Okay, I'll find it, Jay. Thanks.
August 2nd, 2021.
Okay.
It should be.
Thanks, everybody.
Jay, I was just thinking a minute after we mentioned the minutes. There was something in the last minutes about the American Legion and them being closed, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are working very hard to get reopened. They have a new manager. We're putting through paperwork about the new manager. They're wanting to get things booked in the trophy room, their main room. So we're really working hard to get them up and running, and they're working very hard as well. So hopefully you'll hear soon.
Yeah.
Because we have invested a lot in that.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. All right. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up, mention? If not, I'll do a roll call to adjourn the meeting. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second, Sherry.
Okay. All right. Vote yay if you want to adjourn, nay if you want to still talk some more. Robert?
Yay.
Sherry?
Yay.
Rick?
Yay.
Kim?
Yay.
And I vote yay, so.
Yay.
We're adjourned. We probably will have a meeting the second Thursday of October, because just before town meeting. And every time I say we're not going to have a meeting, I get phone calls from town hall about, did you guys do this? Did you guys do that? So right now we'll schedule to have our meeting. It might not be a long one, but.
Did you say Thursday or Tuesday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Thursday's our special day.
Thursdays is our day we've held on to, and
Okay.
the reason we like it is that everybody tends to be able to make it, and none of the other committees seem to pick that time and day, so it's convenient to
That's right.
everybody. So
Okay.
the only reason we had a change is my daughter's getting married next week.
I know.
On Thursday.
Oh, fun.
That wouldn't-
Congratulations.
Exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It would not go over well to skip the wedding.
Oh, especially after all of COVID and
Where are you doing it?
Beauport Hotel, Gloucester.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Great spot.
Oh,
I'm sure my invitation's in the mail, Jay.
I know.
Jay, have a wonderful time.
Yeah,
Yep,
best of
take
luck.
care of yourself.
All right.
yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
Night.
you. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
night.